Hey everyone, Christy here. I'm excited to start this new mini series called No Approval Necessary. I wanted to send out this first email and this first video to you to number one, introduce the series to you, talk a little bit more about what we're going to cover, and also to share a little bit of my own story with you. So first and foremost, I know the information that I gave out online was sort of vague and not a lot of information there. And that was for a reason. I really wanted a small group of women who wanted to do this. I didn't want everyone and their grandmother to sign up because this is, maybe testing a little bit material and such for a bigger book and series that is due to come out in a couple of months, and I wanted to kind of test some of the material with you. So I'm giving this mini series as a great taste tester. In return, I'm going to ask for your honest feedback, and you'll have opportunity to do that as we're going through these weeks, so don't worry. And your honest feedback would mean the world to me. So basically what's going to happen is you're going to get a couple of emails and videos from me throughout the next 6 weeks. It'll be on different aspects of approval addiction and the disease to please. We're going to talk about what that means in just a second here. And then it's up to you to read the emails and do whatever is in there. So there'll be a little bit of conversation, and you can always go to our Facebook community. Even though not everyone in the Facebook community is involved in this group, that's okay. They can see it. They can get it. It'll be fine. It's not a big enough group to really worry about it, but you can go on there and kind of share your thoughts and feelings about kind of what it is that you're learning, and there'll be some prompting from myself on that. Okay, so why this topic and what about this topic, right? So No Approval Necessary really comes from my own story, and you're going to hear a lot of my own story through this series. That's part of the reason I think I want to test this out a little bit. I'm not one to give a lot of detail about my past or my story. Just in the last maybe 6 months has that become something that I felt really compelled to do. And that's really what's prompted a lot of change in Revision. If you've followed Revision for any length of time, you know that we started out doing marketing and business coaching, and now we're stepping away from that, or I'm stepping away from coaching in order to speak and write. And it's definitely taken more of a biblical turn, and definitely sharing more of my story. And so it's kind of hard for me to share that because so many of you who know me now don't know me then. And I guess you're going to get to see the nitty gritty about me, but glory to God, because he's what made this right here, right now. So anyways, but so No Approval Necessary and the steps to overcoming approval addiction, this is completely coming from my own life. I will tell you, there are 2 really amazing books that I have read, 3 really amazing books that I have read. I'll tell them to you now, but also share with you later. Approval Addiction by Joyce Meyer. I'm not a huge Joyce Meyer fan, but she really hits it on the head with that book. And if approval addiction is something like really bad for you, do this mini series, get my book and stuff later, but also get her book too, because it's really good. Beth Moore wrote a book called So Long Insecurity, which is really great, and really had a profound impact on my view of myself and how God sees me and loves me. And then the third book was called Search for Significance by Robert McGee. He did this book it's like having a counselor on paper. You read a lot, you study a lot, but you answer a lot of questions, and there's a lot of retrospection that's done, and introspection that's done as you go through the book. So really good material. But what you're going to get from me is original Christy stuff. So for those of you who don't really know me, really quickly, what you know from me professionally, number one is I have a dog, and she's pitching a fit because every time I get ready to record, she all of a sudden wants to play. So if you hear her, that's what it is. So for me, I'm a speaker and a writer, and I own a company called Revision, and my goal is to encourage, empower, and inspire women to be the amazing women God created them to be, instead of getting hung up on what our past, our mistakes, our failures, even our labels and our hats that we wear try to tell us we can be. Because a lot of times those 2 things don't line up. We get caught up in what our past mistakes and our shortcomings say. Oh, you can't do that. You surely couldn't be that. But I'm here to tell you that You can. And my life is living proof of that. And I'm going to share that with you as we go on through this mini series together. So that's really what I'm about. I try to do that through writing material such as No Approval Necessary. I'll also let you know that there is another book coming out this year called Revised Behind Bars, and it's my personal story. And that I'm pretty excited about. So more on that as it comes around. But if you go to the website, you'll start to see more and more blogs, online Bible studies, faith-based studies, just for regular everyday life, and how we can learn to really live our fullest and how God's designed us to live in that. And so that's really my passion when it comes to speaking and writing. Those are my most favorite things to speak about, is finding God in everyday life. And so even when I talk about time management and how do we, can get control and know how to better manage our lives. There's scripture that can help us with that, and God has a viewpoint for that. And so I love digging that out and sharing that with women so that they can live their best life. And so anyways, all that to say that lots of really good stuff coming your way. So I hope you hang with me through here, through this mini series, and you get more as we go along, and you can find more stuff like that on the website. So, No Approval Necessary is going to cover this. We're going to talk about where approval addiction starts. What is approval addiction, first of all, and where does it start? And I'm going to try to talk to you a little bit about that today. And then we're going to also talk about how to recognize when we're driven by approval addiction, the areas that sometimes crops up in. The most popular areas that crops up in, how do we combat it and how do we become aware of it? Because I think a lot of times it's a slow moving process. It doesn't happen overnight that we all of a sudden find ourselves addicted to people's approval and needing to get the applause from people. But it happens gradually, and all of a sudden we wake up and realize that we are this stop, Musha. Ow, she just bit me. Anyways, we find that we are these approval seeking people that that we never saw ourselves as, and all of a sudden that happens. So we're going to talk about how to become aware of it, and then we're also going to weave in there some of the symptoms that come from being an approval addict, because you might even be listening to this right now going, well, I signed up to do this free mini series because it's Christy and I like her and there's always something good that comes from her, but I don't really know if I'm an approval addict. Well, you're going to find out really fast if you are, if you aren't. I hope you can say no that you're not, but if you are, even the slightest little bit, this series is going to help you kind of move past that. And that would be great if you find yourself just even the littlest bit of an approval addict, because you can cut that off right now and not have to go through everything that maybe I've gone through or someone else has gone through to have that realization. So let's first talk about what approval addiction is. Approval addiction is needing to know that your success, that your identity, that your worth, that your value, that your significance exists and thrives on everyone else being in agreement and everyone else saying, yeah, that's awesome. Good job. Now, that's not to say that we can't enjoy the praise of others. When we do a good job, and we've been working really hard on something, a pat on the back that says, awesome, good job, way to go, you're amazing. All of that's fine and dandy, and that's healthy, and there's nothing wrong with appreciating that. In fact, if you do a study of the 5 love languages, and you read that book by Gary Chapman, one of the love languages is words of affirmation. And so words of affirmation are that sort of pat on the back that sort of build you up and tell you how great you are. And that is a-okay, and that is healthy. Even God told Jesus when he was walking on the earth, this is my good son. This is my son that I'm pleased with. He said that. And so, if Jesus enjoys a little pat on the back, we can enjoy a little pat on the back, right? But it's a whole different thing when our decisions, our actions, our worth, our value, everything hinges on that approval that we want to get from people. The reason why that becomes very dangerous and becomes a very slippery slope is that you will find that you make big choices, life choices, and go in lots of directions to chase the approval instead of going the direction you need to go and seeing if the approval follows. Do you catch the difference there? Approval addiction means that you run after where the approval lies, whereas a secure person in the right frame of mind and the right heart follows what they know they need to do and hopes that there's approval that comes along with it. That's probably the best way to describe the good side of approval and the bad side of approval. For me, that's exactly what happened. I totally went on to the bad side of approval. I completely went to the dark side and bought vacation property there and stayed. It's totally what happened to me. And a lot of times we can look back and see where that started from. And we're going to work on that in our next lesson. So hang on. But for me, really quickly, I'll tell you that it really came out of my teen/young adult life. Most of the time I see people who struggle with approval addiction because they didn't get approval from key people in their lives. So let's say their moms and dads didn't give them any approval. They never gave them any encouragement or words to build them up. And so what they do then is they go out in the world seeking that, and they'll do anything they can to get someone's approval, to have someone say that they're good and they're great and they're wonderful. So my story wasn't like that. I actually had parents that totally built me up, totally loved on me, encouraged me from here till the end, right? Totally great. But there was a lot of pressure that came from being in a family that was perfect, if you want to say that. My parents would be the first people to tell you that we weren't perfect and that they're not perfect and that our life wasn't perfect. But I think that people saw us as a perfect family because they wanted what we had. Okay, so follow me here. So my parents are high school sweethearts. They married really young, had me really young, and then my sister and brother not too long after that. And although life was really tough for them, like, we hung together and we made it through some really tough times. My parents were really poor when I was a kid. When I was a really young kid, it wasn't probably until I was pretty much graduated high school that they kind of really had their financial means about them and had some disposable income and wasn't really worried about money. And so, it wasn't perfect. But we went to church together as a family every Sunday. We were there Sunday nights. We were there Wednesday nights. My parents were active in the church together. They did things. They were leaders in our youth group. My dad would sit down and do Bible studies with us at night after dinner. One of my fondest memories of my dad was getting up in the morning to go to school. He would take me to school. And while I was still in my PJs, half asleep, I would be sitting at the breakfast table eating breakfast. And my dad would be on the other side of the table with his Bible and his little daily devotional book, and he would be reading the Bible, and I would see him sit there every morning reading his Bible, and I would watch him bow his head and pray. And that's what I grew up with. And so although it wasn't perfect, to a lot of people, they didn't have that. And even people in our church, I think, looked at that and said, man, I really want that. Even though they weren't sitting at the breakfast table with us, they knew kind of what we were about, and they could see that in the lives of my parents and in the lives of their kids. And so there was this whole idea, I think, of we kind of want what they have. And I remember being a teenager and having the people in our youth group, the moms especially in our youth group, that their kids were in there with me, their sons, they wanted their sons so bad to date me, okay? Now, I know you're looking at me now going, what would they wish on their kid? No, I was really cute back then, just trust me. But more so than that was that I was a good kid. I was really involved in my church, and I was a leader in my youth group, and I was the kid that was doing Bible study on my own at night, and and that showed itself in my life. And so I remember hearing mothers say this to me, oh my gosh, if you would just date my son, I wouldn't have to worry because they would be with a good girl. And so that started planting the seed, and I started feeling like, oh, people are watching me. People know what I'm doing. They notice me. And it started to kind of freak me out a little bit, I think, because people were really starting to pay attention. And I just was like, yeah, that's who I am. I'm this kid that's really involved in church, and my faith is important to me, and cool, this is great. But after I graduated high school, I went on to college and hated college every second. Hated it. I ended up, after my freshman year in college, wanting some sort of other experience. I just needed to not be at college. And I actually was looking for something just during the summer. But I ended up getting accepted into this ministry organization based out of Michigan that traveled the country doing anti-violence and anti-drug abuse programs in high schools. And so we would show up and we would do an assembly program that involved drama and music. And we would teach them about how to make better choices for themselves. And then at the evening, we would come back and do just the straight concert of Christian music. And then we could share our testimonies and kind of witness to these kids. So that sounded like a lot of fun to me. And so I signed up and got accepted, and that's what I did. And so I dropped out of college to go do that. And as I had to prepare for that, one of the things I had to do was raise money to cover my costs to go do this ministry thing. And so I remember going to my church on a Wednesday night in front of my congregation and sharing with them what I was going to go do and saying, and can I have your support? Can you please, write a check to help me finance this trip or this excursion? And so people got behind me and raised support, and I went on to the trip. And I remember that night after that Wednesday night service, having a lot of people I knew. I was close to these people in my church, and a lot of them I remember coming to me and saying, "Oh, I can't wait to hear what God's going to do through you while you're in this ministry, position or with this group." Or, "I can't wait to see how God's going to change you and what he's going to do with you. And your future is so good. It's going to be just amazing. You're going to do amazing things for the kingdom." And it was all of this like, yay, God's going to do cool things for you. And I was like, yay, I'm totally scared to death. Because first of all, it was the first time I was really going to be away from home and away from my family. But also because I knew all of these people were watching me, and I knew they were all expecting me to deliver. And now financially, they had backed me in what I was doing. And so I really had to deliver. It was like I had to return their investment somehow in souls for Jesus, So it was a lot of pressure. And so, to tell that story now, I kind of think about that and go, that really wasn't that big a deal. I should have just totally been okay with that. But the funny thing about approval addiction is it only takes one little itty bitty thing, and Satan grabs it, and the enemy grabs it and plants it, grows it into this huge insecurity, approval addiction beast. And then all of a sudden you find yourself really stuck in this approval addiction situation. So that's where mine started. It started with just this little seed of expectation, this little seed of people wanting to see me be successful. And their intentions were good. I mean, they were so good, and they were so supportive and so excited whenever they got a chance to see me or hear from me and know what I was doing. But it was that little baby seed that took plant in my heart. And then I had to always be the girl who had it together, the girl who was doing big things for the kingdom, the girl who had the world by the tail and was slinging it around. That had to be me. From that point forward, I really felt that pressure. And I really felt that I needed to keep that going in order to keep their opinions of me sustained. And even the people that were just getting to know me, for them to know that, hey, this awesome got it together girl, I've been like that since day one. That's kind of how I felt, that I had to sort of have it together. And I had to put on appearances. And so approval addiction can be the biggest lie, because what happens for us when we are approval addicted is that we begin to build a persona and build ourselves and our hearts in such a way that we are no longer authentic to ourselves. And sometimes we are the ones that believe that lie the best. We buy into it. Everyone else is looking at us going, I really don't think she has it all together. I really think there's issues there. But we totally believe that. We totally have it all together. And we have the shiniest exterior. Inside, we are dying. And the people that know us can usually see through that. But yeah, we go on believing the lie. And so approval addiction looks a little different for everyone. For me, that's what approval addiction looked like. For you, it might mean that you need to get love because you didn't have it before, or the love that you did have wasn't healthy and wasn't right. And so approval addiction for you is doing whatever you need to do to get love from someone or affection. It might be security. Maybe you do whatever you need to do and you're driven and your approval addiction in order to get security because you maybe came from a dysfunctional or disruptive home, or maybe you've had some great tragedy that sort of yanked the rug out from underneath you, and insecurity and fear has taken root. And so you now jump through hoops for approval so that you gain security in that. We see approval addiction show up a lot in relationships because you'll do whatever it takes in order to get that person's approval because you don't want to upset them. You don't want them to leave. You don't want them to not like you. You don't want them to confirm your biggest fear, which your biggest fear inside of you, deep down inside, is that they're going to leave you, that you're not good enough, that you're not worthy to have that love, that you're not worth their time, that you can't keep it together and you can't make everything work out all right. And really, approval addiction is fear. It totally is fear. It completely is fear. And it's fear that can run rampant in all aspects of life. And so we're going to talk about the different aspects of where approval addiction shows up, what it looks like, how to identify it, and then what do we do to pluck it out and get rid of it and become aware of it. And I'm here to tell you that approval addiction exists like every other addiction. You can try to conquer it today, but you're going to do that same battle tomorrow. It is not a once and done thing. I truly believe that, at least in my experience, that even though I identify it and I can be aware of it and I can pull it out right then and there and say, that's approval addiction, I still battle with it every single day. It is something that is not nearly as controlling anymore as it was for me. But if I was to totally, turn a blind eye to it and say, oh, I have that conquered, I don't have to worry about it anymore, it would come back in full force. It's really like a weed. When you pull that weed out, another one pops up somewhere else. Or if you don't get it all out, it keeps growing. And even if you did the best job cleaning the weeds out, if you just never maintain that garden or never maintain that landscaping, guess what? Those weeds just come back. And so it's not a perfect world and we're not perfect people. And so those things continue to crop up. And Satan wants nothing more than for us to get hung up on that again. He knows our weaknesses. He knows where our sticking points are. And he knows that if he can just wedge a little hole in there, that he can rip it wide open and cause destruction in our hearts and lives again. And so we want to combat that, and we want to be able to identify it from the moment it starts to creep up, to be able to call it out, take it out, and then move on to a healthier option and a healthier a way of living in that. So more of that when we go through the series. I can't wait to start sharing some of this with you. It is something I've become really passionate about because I mean, it was really important to me, but I also am seeing it in other people's lives, and other women's lives. And I became really passionate about talking about this topic because I see it driving women down paths that, number one, are not meant for them, and number two, are not healthy for them. And so let's stop it. Let's put the brakes on and put it in reverse if we need to, and get on the right path, and the path that God really has set aside for us. So more of that as we move forward. I can't wait to send out the first couple of emails to you and to hear your response so far on what we're doing. So be on the lookout. There will be more good things to come. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you very soon.